Yesterday. Donald Trump's newest travel ban was blocked by a Democrat judge from Hawaii. And we found out who is really behind the judge's decision. According to News 2, Obama played golf this Tuesday, then he went to eat lunch at Noi Thai restaurant on the other side of the island. Obama was with his friends at the time, in a private room. But the real deal is this information: Judge Derek Watson, Obama's Harvard classmate and the judge who blocked Trump's order, lives just 5 minutes from that restaurant. We still can't confirm if Obama is standing behind the judge's decision to block Trump's order, but that is very likely. Looks like Obama met with Judge Watson and made him to that. Derek Watson is known to be an Obama appointee and both graduated together at Harvard. This is the only logical explanation. Obama is driving for 40 minutes, getting out of his way to go to a restaurant that by some coincidence happened to be placed next to his former Harvard classmate, who by some coincidence happens to block President Donald Trump's newest executive order the very next day. This is very suspicious. Looks like Barack Obama still wants to meddle in Trump's business and drag him down. This has to stop. What do you think of this? Share your opinion. Obama scandal just erupts in federal court. He won't be able to avoid this gargantuan lawsuit. Judicial Watch has proceeded with its constant push to convey responsibility to the administration. In the course of recent years, and particularly with the expansion of Hillary Clinton to the Obama organization, there has been sufficient defilement to give all-day work to scores of attorneys and agents for quite a long time to come. It's a declaration to the quality of our republic that we have survived the misgovernment these individuals have exacted on us. We're very acquainted with the Obama White House's asserted keeping an eye on individuals from Donald Trump's campaign team and different adversaries of the Democratic Party. It has moved toward becoming an incredible bizarre. Judicial Watch today announced it filed a Freedom of Information (FOIA) lawsuit against the U.S. Department of Justice and the National Security Agency (NSA) for information about Obama National Security Advisor Susan Rice's communications with the two agencies concerning the alleged Russian involvement in the 2016 presidential election, the hacking of DNC computers, the suspected communications between Russia and Trump campaign, transition officials, and the unmasking of the identities of any U.S. citizens associated with the Trump presidential campaign or transition team who were identified pursuant to intelligence collection activities. Be that as it may, now, justice won't be distant. Judicial Watch has formally sued to get the reports that would uncover the degree of the reconnaissance movement. That is a horrendously long articulation, yet it's pressed with data. For a certain something, unmistakably this claim is extraordinarily thorough. As such, Judicial Watch is not simply snacking around the edges of the issues, however, is assaulting the whole scandal with the objective of ferreting out every one of the players and also whatever wrongdoings they may have conferred. We want to know about the Obama White House involvement in the unprecedented spying on Donald Trump and other political opponents, said Judicial Watch President Tom Fitton. This intelligence operation may have led to the illegal unmasking of Americans and the leaking of intelligence information to foment the story of Russian hacking of the DNC and sinister Russian influence on Trump and his associates. The Trump administration has an opportunity to expose what the Obama White House was up to. Given the seriousness of some of those claimed wrongdoings, it's nothing unexpected that the administration is attempting to sit on this data. On the off chance that doubts end up being valid, criminal arraignments will clearly take after. Not just that, the respectability and open trust of our intelligence offices, as of now having taken a hit, will be additionally harmed. This is the situation that could very well tear things wide open, America. The main question now is, will Obama ever be rebuffed for keeping an eye on us? What do you think about this? Do not hesitate and write your thoughts in the comment section below. Thank you for reading. HT Judicial Watch. FBI with a shocking proposal to Senate about Trump's investigation. President Trump shocked America with his statements that he has been spied on. We have one important point to mention in light of this issue. Why have the FBI agents offered to pay Christopher Steele for investigating Trump, the same man who has been paid by the Clintons to investigate Trump? How can you have an FBI that is under a Democratic establishment trying to third-party investigate a political rival? Well, Chuck Grassley has decided to resolve this. From Washington Examiner. Senator Charles Grassley, chairman of the Senate Judiciary Committee, has sent a letter to FBI Director James Comey demanding the story behind the FBI's reported plan to pay the author of a lurid and unsubstantiated dossier on candidate Donald Trump. In particular, Grassley appears to be zeroing in on the FBI's Deputy Director, Andrew McCabe, indicating Senate investigators want to learn more about McCabe's role in a key aspect of the Trump-Russia affair. Grassley began his investigation after The Washington Post reported on February 28 that the FBI, a few weeks before the election, agreed to pay former British spy Christopher Steele to investigate Trump. Hillary's fans had basically paid Steele to investigate Donald Trump before the FBI started speaking with them. So this quickly raised some questions. Did there exist any contact between the Clinton and the FBI with regard to Steele? Eventually, the FBI did not pay Steele after media attention to the dossier. The idea that the FBI and associates of the Clinton campaign would pay Mr. Steele to investigate the Republican nominee for president in the run-up to the election raises further questions about the FBI's independence from politics, as well as the Obama administration's use of law enforcement and intelligence agencies for political ends, Grassley noted in a letter to FBI Director James Comey from March 28. This raises a lot of other questions too. What do you think of this? Share your opinion. Obama is done. The NSA released the evidence Trump was looking for. Washington. In the Obama administration's last days, some White House officials scrambled to spread information about Russian efforts to undermine the presidential election, and about possible contacts between associates of President-elect Donald J. Trump and Russians, across the government. Former American officials say they had two aims: to ensure that such meddling isn't duplicated in future American or European elections, and to leave a clear trail of intelligence for government investigators. American allies, including the British and the Dutch, had provided information describing meetings in European cities between Russian officials, and others close to Russia's president, Vladimir V. Putin, and associates of President-elect Trump, according to three former American officials who requested anonymity in discussing classified intelligence. Separately, American intelligence agencies had intercepted communications of Russian officials, some of them within the Kremlin, discussing contacts with Trump associates. According to a former senior American official, he met with the Russian ambassador, Sergei Kislyak, twice in the past year. The details of the meetings were not clear, but the contact appeared to contradict testimony Mr. Sessions provided Congress during his confirmation hearing in January when he said he did not have communications with the Russians. Mr. Sessions said in a statement late Wednesday that he never met with any Russian officials to discuss issues of the campaign. Mr. Trump has denied that his campaign had any contact with Russian officials, and at one point he openly suggested that American spy agencies had cooked up intelligence suggesting that the Russian government had tried to meddle in the presidential election. At the Obama White House, Mr. Trump's statements stoked fears among some that intelligence could be covered up or destroyed, or its sources exposed, once power changed hands. What followed was a push to preserve the intelligence that underscored the deep anxiety with which the White House and American intelligence agencies had come to view the threat from Moscow. Sean Spicer, the Trump White House spokesman, said, "The only new piece of information that has come to light is that political appointees in the Obama administration have sought to create a false narrative to make an excuse for their own defeat in the election. He added, "There continues to be no there." As Inauguration Day approached, Obama White House officials grew convinced that the intelligence was damning and that they needed to ensure that as many people as possible inside government could see it, even if people without security clearances could not. Some officials began asking specific questions at intelligence briefings, knowing the answers would be archived and could be easily unearthed by investigators, including the Senate Intelligence Committee, which in early January announced an inquiry into Russian efforts to influence the election. At intelligence agencies, there was a push to process as much raw intelligence as possible into analyses, and to keep the reports at a relatively low classification level to ensure as wide a readership as possible across the government, and, in some cases, among European allies. This allowed the upload of as much intelligence as possible to Intellipedia, a secret wiki used by American analysts to share information. When the intelligence community does that type of comprehensive review, it is standard practice that a significant amount of information would be compiled and documented. The opposite happened with the most sensitive intelligence, including the names of sources and the identities of foreigners who were regularly monitored. More than a half-dozen current and former officials described various aspects of the effort to preserve and distribute the intelligence, and some said they were speaking to draw attention to the material and ensure proper investigation by Congress. Separately, the House and Senate Intelligence Committees are conducting their own investigations, though they must rely on information collected by the FBI and intelligence agencies. On Wednesday, a Justice Department official confirmed that Mr. Sessions had 2 conversations with Ambassador Kislyak last year, when he was still a senator, despite testifying at his January 10 confirmation hearing that he had no contact with the Russians. He added that if there was, "It is clear to me that Jeff Sessions, who is my dear friend, cannot make this decision about Trump." At his confirmation hearing on Wednesday, former Senator Dan Coats, Mr. Trump's nominee for Director of National Intelligence, told the Senate Intelligence Committee that "I think it's our responsibility to provide you access to all that you need." Some Obama White House officials had little faith that a Trump administration would make good on such pledges, and the efforts to preserve the intelligence continued until the administration's final hours. This was partly because intelligence was still being collected and analyzed, but it also reflected the sentiment among many administration officials that they had not recognized the scale of the Russian campaign until it was too late. As WikiLeaks was pushing out emails stolen from the Democratic National Committee through online publication, American intelligence began picking up conversations in which Russian officials were discussing contacts with Trump associates, and European allies were starting to pass along information about people close to Mr. Trump meeting with Russians in the Netherlands, Britain and other countries. It wasn't until after the election, and after more intelligence had come in, that the administration began to grasp the scope of the suspected tampering and concluded that one goal of the campaign was to help tip the election in Mr. Trump's favor. In early December, Mr. Obama ordered the intelligence community to conduct a full assessment of the Russian campaign. In the weeks before the assessment was released in January, the intelligence community combed through databases for an array of communications and other information, some of which was months old by then, and began producing reports that showed there were contacts during the campaign between Trump associates and Russian officials. The New York Times, citing 4 current and former officials, reported last month that the American authorities had obtained information of repeated contacts between Mr. Trump's associates and senior Russian intelligence officials. Since the February 14 article appeared, more than a half-dozen officials have confirmed contacts of various kinds between Russians and Trump associates. The label intelligence official is not always cleanly applied in Russia, where ex-spies, oligarchs and government officials often report back to the intelligence services and elsewhere in the Kremlin. Stephen L. Hall, the former head of Russia operations at the CIA, said that Mr. Putin was surrounded by a cast of characters, and that it was fair to say that a good number of them come from an intelligence or security background. Once an intel guy, always an intel guy in Russia. The concerns about the contacts were cemented by a series of phone calls between Mr. Kislyak and Michael T. Flynn, who had been poised to become Mr. Trump's national security advisor. The calls began on December 29, shortly after Mr. Kislyak was summoned to the State Department and informed that, in retaliation for Russian election meddling, the United States was expelling 35 suspected Russian intelligence operatives and imposing other sanctions. A day later, Mr. Putin said his government would not retaliate, prompting a Twitter post from Mr. Trump praising the Russian president, and puzzling Obama White House officials. American intelligence agencies routinely wiretapped the phones of Russian diplomats, and transcripts of the calls showed that Mr. Flynn urged the Russians not to respond, saying relations would improve once Mr. Trump was in office, according to multiple current and former officials. American intelligence agencies made it clear in the declassified version of the intelligence assessment released in January that they believed Russia intended to use its attacks on the United States as a template for more meddling. Dr. Ben Carson uncovers filthy Obama skeleton. $400 plus billion fraud just erupts. Amid the later years of the sad Obama era, the president pushed a wide range of radical policies through different offices. By enabling his confidants all through the administration to definitely change guidelines and laws all alone, Congress was effectively evaded. It's sufficiently terrible when our imbecilic government officials push poo down our throats. However, it's far more atrocious when unelected civil servants do it in mystery. That is quite recently the embodiment of corruption. One of the organizations most blameworthy of mystery mishandle is Housing and Urban Development. HUD has a terrifying measure of influence in forming our country's groups, and not just that, adequate open door exists for it to waste taxpayers' cash. What's more, they didn't recently waste your cash under President Obama, they tossed mammoth wads of it down the can. As announced at Yes I'm Right, as the new head of HUD, Dr. Ben Carson required a quick review to reveal any inefficiency and abuse. Shockingly, however regrettably, the Inspector General accountable for the survey discovered a large portion of $1 trillion in unaccounted stores. Clearly, HUD's books are so terribly dealt with that a full review couldn't be finished amid an underlying request. It's bad to the point this is looking less like inadequacy and more like by and large corruption and kickbacks. That, and there's a large portion of $1 trillion in errors, which would loan belief to the IG's decisions. At the point when Trump initially tapped Carson for the HUD position, the commonplace carnival of leftist jokesters turned out and bashed the decision, with Senate Minority Leader Chuck Schumer being a standout amongst the most basic. I have serious concerns about Dr. Carson's lack of expertise and experience in dealing with housing issues. Someone who is as anti-government as he is a strange fit for the housing secretary, to say least, Schumer said in a statement. That is entertaining. Where's his honest worry over the crazy measure of cash his quite qualified ancestor lost? Nancy Pelosi additionally mouthed off, saying Carson was a disconcerting and disturbingly unqualified choice. Yes, Wells, truly perturbing that Pelosi's excessively Botoxed confront is as yet invading Congress following quite a while of demonstrating she has the mental limit of a kid. Abandon it to the left to demonstrate zero worries over a large portion of $1 trillion bumble when one of their folks is in control. Carson is more than met all requirements for the employment, particularly if he should simply not lose billions of dollars because of poor bookkeeping. Possibly he'll really save American residents some money. Wouldn't that be a decent change of pace from the Democrats? What do you think about this? Do not hesitate and write your thoughts in the comment section below.